Hello and welcome to this SlimDevOps live episode 43. This was streamed live on twitch.tv/SlimDevOps. So if you're watching this after the fact on YouTube, please do come over to twitch.tv/SlimDevOps and give us a follow there so you can join in interactively with the rest of our community. And today we're joined by Danny and Esme and Tommy and Big Pod. I can see a few other new faces in there. Welcome one, welcome all. Today I'm joined by Sam. Hello, Sam.
Hey, Martin.
This is your first time on the stream, I think.
It is the first time, so yeah, I hope I can live up to the standard that Peter and Big Pod have set before me.
I'm sure it'll be great. As we were just discussing as we were bringing up the stream, you seem to be our talisman. All of the technology has worked first time today without any hiccups. So let's see if I haven't jinxed it. So before we get into the topic today, what have you been up to recently?
Yeah, just doing design for Slim and currently in Texas. I kind of live the nomad life, so this will be my last week in Texas, and I'll be working from California after that. But one of the great things about working at Slim.AI is I get to kind of work wherever I want to.
Fantastic. So it's a new topic today, right? Yeah. So you're the senior product design lead, in fact, at Slim, and we have been involved in the Docker Desktop Extension Partner Program. So I'm just going to very quickly explain what that is. So this week, DockerCon is taking place, and tomorrow is the main event day, and a couple of things are going to be unveiled. One of what of personal interest to me is Docker Desktop for Linux, which I've been testing for a few weeks now. And the other thing is Docker Desktop Extension. So if you're familiar with Visual Studio Code, think extensible add-ons for Docker Desktop. And we've been part of the partner program for that, and we have a Docker Desktop extension for the Slim.AI developer platform. And you've been an integral part in, designing it, the central part, but also the sort of the part of the team that's implemented this. So first of all, if this is all brand new, this is a brand new platform, how was it adapting to a new set of tooling?
Yeah, it had been a while since I've worked on a project that was contained within a different environment than the web. I've been working on design for over 10 years, and so it's it takes me back to when the Apple iOS App Store first launched, and I was working in fintech back then, and I was having to design all these new app experiences in a completely different environment with completely different requirements. It wasn't, and now that I'm working under Docker, within their Docker Desktop Extension framework or their new environment, it's not as strict as iOS is yet, but it's having those kind of requirements that you have to design under always makes for a challenging experience. But one person actually put it really well, I think. I don't know, some strange random designer on Twitter I once read that having strict requirements for a designer is like having to write under the requirements of a haiku. You can actually come up with the best work when you're kind of restricted by these external forces.
Right. So that's an interesting point. So you find a source of creativity in being constrained in sort of how you can express the design.
Yeah, I think as a designer, sometimes your worst enemy is your own doubt in yourself and your own obsession with perfection. And when you're kind of restricted from doing everything your way, I think it can actually realize that you just have to go one singular path, and you follow that, and you do that path really well. And sometimes, I think a lot of times, it produces a really beautiful product. And I think what we've done here in such a short period of time with the Docker Desktop extension, it looks pretty cool to me.
Yeah, now there will be people thinking, ooh, can we see the Docker Desktop extension? I think you're going to show us some prototypes, but what I will say is this. There's a big unveiling tomorrow for the extensions program. We're going to be a part of that. We will have a blog post up on the website above my head on Slim.AI, which tells you how to get the extension and all the rest of it. So we're going to be doing more live streams tomorrow, and also in Discord. The URL you'll find in the website above, and those of you in chat, you'll see our well-trained bot is telling you where our Discord server is. If you join there, all of the streams and events that we're doing around DockerCon this week are all scheduled in there. It will keep you notified of when we go live, when people from Slim are presenting at DockerCon, with links just to take you to the right place. So do join the Discord, because it's like your hopping off point to everything. So if it's a new platform, and you've already mentioned that there were some constraints in sort of the design language that you could use, were there any other challenges that you faced with sort of this initial implementation?
Yeah, I'd say time was our biggest challenge to overcome. And as a designer, it's always a luxury to have a lot of time, but it's a rare luxury. We like to take our time testing designs, doing as much user research as possible. But Docker Desktop, they're unveiling their extensions in a pretty a short timeline for us. And so I had to find a way to where I could use design as a way to enhance our product while not being an obstacle to actually launching it by the deadline. So, but that is, also having deadlines in a similar way of having design requirements. It also often forces you to just kind of commit to one track and create a really cool product. Like we have.
So you mentioned sort of the time constraints. When did you start getting involved in this sort of project?
I want to say it was like by the end of March, we were starting to work on it on the design side. So what happened is we needed a proof of concept. And so the two engineers, there's a huge team, but the two engineers leading it, JB and Evan, kind of created this proof of concept for the Docker Desktop extension. And I had to find ways we could have a little bit of enhancement and about a week's time before we showed the Docker team. And then after that, we were given about a month to work through some proper designs and proper front-end development. So all in all, maybe like a month and a half we're looking at.
Yeah, that's not a lot of time really, is it, to create a whole cloth new thing? I spoke to Evan about this. I think everyone's really found that quite challenging.
Yeah, that's the startup life, right? And the great thing about technology is we can iterate on it. And so while I'm really proud of what we came up with, I can't wait to get user feedback, especially other people watching this or who will be attending DockerCon. That will be is when we can, the most valuable time, or most valuable asset as a designer I can have is user feedback. So I'm excited to see what the next iteration looks like too.
So you're talking about iterations there. Can you give us a glimpse at sort of what we started with and where we've got to in terms of sort of the designs?
Yeah, definitely. Would you like me to share now, or just keep on speaking to it?
Yeah, if you want, shall I switch over to your view, your shared screen?
Yeah, it's your call, but I'm happy to start sharing the designs, and
okay.
I think it kind of speaks to the where we started to where we're at now.
So, what are we looking at here?
So I work within a Vuetify design system. Anyone that's used Vuetify, that it's an up and coming front end framework, and it also has its own, application constraints, its own design constraints. So I've been kind of slowly creating my own design system based on the Vuetify principles. And I hope to someday share this design system with the larger design community that they can copy and use. But using our Vuetify design system, we first came up with our first iteration of the Docker Desktop extension. And as you can see here, we're kind of looking at a pretty bare bones experience. The Docker Desktop extension. The Docker desktop experience is basically everything right here on the top nav and then the left nav. Those are all kind of what we have to work under. And then we're given this little area on the, the center right. And as you can see, the buttons we use and maybe the drop-down designs, everything is pretty utilitarian. Just text and some basic buttons. And so that's what like the first iteration we came up with, like, hey, just make sure to get some buttons in there, see how it works, and see how and see if the Docker desktop can, or the Docker team will, I guess, sort of prove us to the next checkpoint, and then we can start making it a little bit fancier.
So, is Figma just a prototyping tool, or can you move these designs into an actual implementation, sort of code, if you will?
So Figma it's definitely not the latter part of that. Figma is a prototyping a mock-up tool,
right?
But it does have a lot of great things where you can inspect the CSS and it actually exports it. And so when I hand these designs, and so we, the first version, we had all these different designs. If you can see here, there's a lot of design elements on this that will, require a lot of different CSS, and Figma produces it outside here. So the position, width, height, and background, stuff like that. And so our designer, Evan, can take it into Viewtify and use the same components that I'm using. And so that's what makes Figma pretty cool. But yeah, I think there is definitely still a big gap between the design tool and, the developers having to produce it themselves.
Right, I understand. So once you've got these initial POCs, then what happens? You just start to implement that and see how it feels?
So it's like the design, the engineers are working, like Evan and JB, the engineers are working so hard on this and leading their team to work so hard on this, that I think the first iteration was just, hey, make sure Sam sees this, get some input on it so we can get it to the Docker team and they can make it, pass us to the next way, the next checkpoint. And so that was the first part of it. After that, I start sort of designing it into something a more rich experience. So as you can see here, this is like the first iteration. We have these are containers that Slim.AI can analyze within your local environment, so or a public container as well. So as you can see here, you would have the compare, analyze, and when the user clicks analyze, it would drop down, expand this whole card. A little piece of feedback is what was great is like when we pushed this first iteration, a lot of users in like the Docker team, they gave us feedback. They're like, hey, it's not really clear that this analyze button really expands it, and how do you collapse it? So we got little pieces of research. I would call that guerrilla research, where you're just trying to find some sort of feedback any possible way you can without having a formalized research framework. And you can make a lot of improvements. So if I go to, like, for example, the second iteration, we have a much more expanded design. Whereas if this is your home screen in the Docker desktop or the Slim.AI part of the Docker desktop extension environment, now we have things broken up. Here's your local environment with some of your local containers. We have a big, giant drop-down arrow that explains, hey, this is an accordion. You can expand it and collapse it just like a normal design would do, as opposed to our previous one, where it's just kind of a weird stopgap of design. We break it up into your connected registries, your public registries. Move that over there, doing some live design there. And having some more of these compare and add to collection things on the right, which I think, having icons and having a little bit more polish to the design definitely makes a good first impression.
And also for anyone that's used the Slim developer platform, those icons are familiar. You will have seen those before, almost certainly clicked on them. You'll know what you're doing. So for anyone wondering what on earth does our extension do, what on earth does our platform do, well, one of the things you can do is you can inspect and explore and compare and diff container images across different registries and locally. And obviously this extension is has got that local inspection capability. If you go to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/SlimDevOps, there's a video there which I did with Evan, who Sam was referring to, where Evan showed a very early sort of build of the extension and talked a bit about the developer experience of getting to grips with a new platform. So as a follow-on from this, you can head over there, and then on Wednesday this week, Joseph is joining me to talk more about the development and build of the extension. So, I mean, this looks fairly complete to me at this point. How far along is this design?
So it's this design is complete for our I guess our beta, if you'll call it that, the thing that we'll be showing tomorrow with all the functionality, I think, or whenever Evan is sharing. I think this is like a good way to sort of start the week, is showing the designs and showing sort of the thought process and the collaboration process. But the big aha moment will be, I think, when we show it at DockerCon or any of our Twitch streams, when the engineers are actually showing the Docker desktop extension and interacting with it, and you kind of see really how powerful it is. But for this iteration, so I have a bunch of designs where it all goes through the different features. And one thing you mentioned is, having basically, these icons might be familiar to you if you use the the Slim.AI developer platform. And so what we're going to find out, I think, through a lot of our research, is that our first users aren't going to be the people that use a Slim developer platform. They're going to be new users. And so it's very important that we use explicit functions to show off our features. So instead of just having icons, we have icons plus text that say compare. And so if you wanted to compare, you could go right into our diff screen and see all the different views for comparing to containers. And so I think, while these designs that I have here are all, complete for the beta iteration, we're going to get a lot of feedback, I think, from a lot of very new users that are like, hey, I think, you guys could be more explicit on this, or, I think I understand your features, but I'm not quite sure how to get there. But time will tell, so we'll see.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point. We obviously have some users on the Slim developer platform, but this Docker extension is going to put us in front of a massive audience pretty quickly. And I think you're right. This is going to be the first experience of Slim.AI for, a lot of people.
Yeah, and I think what's great about our first experience is you don't even have to be a Slim user to first see the benefits of using Slim. For example, you can just sign in or start using the Slim.AI Docker extension, and it'll start picking up what's in your local environment, and you can start exploring without even being a Slim member. But we're confident enough in our value prop and the value we bring developers that we don't need you to sign up first, but we think once you start using it, you're going to want to. And so that's kind of like the less fun part of the design is, how do we handle tons of pages of tokens and like what it means to sign in, and what's the best user experience to get a user from the Slim, the Slim desktop experience here out to the Slim developer platform. And but we take those less fun, those boring parts of design really seriously, because we want everything to feel as seamless as possible.
Yeah. So we've got a couple of questions here. The first is from Tommy, or rather a statement from Tommy. Tommy says, I really need to look into the Slim stuff. It sounds super interesting to me. Yeah, do. Head over to Slim.ai. There's a get started button. Log in using one of your accounts for, GitHub, GitLab, or Bitbucket, I think is another one. And just have a play. And also you can see on the site, we've just added some new security scorecards for some popular containers. They'll give you an impression of some of the things that you can explore and find out about container images. So yeah, come on over. The water's lovely. And if you've got questions, I see our bot is put in the links to our Discord channel, and if you don't know it, then just visit the URL above. Come and join us there and ask any questions you might have. And then Esme had a question. So she says, is the font color for the history columns and anything from the right the same as in the final product? I don't know if it's the bright colors from the Slim overlay, but it seems a little dark. I wonder if it's a bit hard to read. So is this an early prototype, and how does it compare to what we have at the moment?
Yeah, so the colors, we're still working with the Docker desktop team about the style guide, because we have our own color palette and we're kind of adhering to that, but we're thinking in the future we might have to adapt our extension colors to be more in line with their colors, which they're not even that far off. But that's great feedback from who was it?
Esme.
Esme. Yeah, thank you, Esme. Yeah, like now that you say it, like this is pretty dark. And I think if you look at I think the inspiration there is, my decision there is, if you look at go to if you're using a Mac, for example, and go to your Finder, you see all the different columns of information for each file. They've always grayed out this information. I was like, oh, I kind of like that, where it's, it kind of makes things a little bit easier to break apart. But yeah, like just taking that information and feedback is like kind of what I'm talking about, where this next iteration of design is going to be really critical to get us feedback as much as possible. So, I mean, I'll start designing like on the fly right now. Let's like lighten it up a little. Maybe that's a little too similar. So we'll do like a lighten 3 and maybe even make it a little bit darker. So we'll do a lighten 1. Yeah. So I think that's kind of the feedback that I'm looking at when people start using this Docker desktop and start giving us actual qualitative feedback, non-behavioral analytics feedback stuff. We're like, hey, just like, I don't like the way this button looks. That's the feedback that I want. So if anyone starts using this like Docker desktop extension and it's like, you know what, Sam, I don't know why you made this choice as a designer. There's a lot of reasons why, maybe that decision was the wrong one. And I as a designer I need to hear that. And so if you have any feedback, please join our Discord, join our community.slim.ai, and leave us some feedback and say, hey, this design decision was wrong. Can you make it better? And we're all ears.
Yeah. So thank you, Esme. There you go. You're officially now part of the product feedback cycle. And our bot has rather dutifully just put the link to our Discord channel in the chat. And if you join there, you'll find we have a channel called Feedback, which is just for product feedback. So that if you've got any other, tomorrow when you get your hands on this extension and you get to have a play with it, and I think for some of you this may be the most accessible way to have a play with the Slim.AI tooling, send your feedback in that channel. Sam's in there, he'll see that, and we can have a conversation about it. So thank you, Esme.
Yeah, thank you.
So I think you were saying that you'd actually created something to sort of help this design process, to make the Figma tooling a little bit more useful. What did you do there?
Yeah, so one thing that I discovered, because we were like one of the earliest companies to start working with Docker on this Docker desktop extension program they have, and I needed a design system, a UI kit to work within in Figma. And Figma has this brilliant part of their product called the community, where you can just search for pretty much anything. You could go to Chrome and you can get a Google Chrome UI kit, a universal. So you can see the first ones really. So for example, Google Chrome, there's 66 UI kits you can choose from. And so I started typing in Docker, and at the time I didn't see, like, none of these still to this day aren't any of the Docker desktop UI kits. So I'm like, oh, well, I should just create my own. And that's what I did. And I ended up just making it public for the whole community on Figma designers. So anyone can come here and take this Docker desktop UI kit and start creating Docker desktop extensions using this. I will say that the Docker desktop team has a brilliant design team, and they're going to create their own UI kit that will kick this UI kit's butt. But in the meantime, this is a great choice here is to use the Docker desktop dark UI kit that I have here. And so it's pretty cool. So anyone can take it and start designing within Docker desktop. So what you do is you start duplicating it. It opens it up. Takes a few seconds. As it duplicates and becomes your own basically repository of designs. And you'll have all these different components here where you can start building out the different parts of the Docker desktop extension. And there's even templates here. So, this is what the Docker desktop homepage, the home area looks like. So this kind of really falls in with our open source, dogma that we have at Slim.AI is, we aren't just, a company, we are an open source platform, like with using Docker Slim. And so this is sort of an open source design strategy, I guess, that I'm trying to push into the design community. But I will say, you don't have to be a designer to use the Docker desktop UI kit that I've created. Figma is so easy to use. I've always said that like anybody can be a designer. And my goal, and I've always tried to get the engineers on our team to start using Figma and start designing stuff really quickly, so they don't have to, just like proof of concepts. And I guess my ultimate objective is to like design myself out of a job and have everyone else do my work. But I always say you should. Anyone can do this. Anyone can go into Figma. It's free. Figma is free for one user, up to one user. You can go in there, you can copy this, and you can start designing some cool Docker experiences.
So as a developer, or a lapsed developer with little to no design acumen, I feel nervous about that statement because I have, in air quotes, designed things in the past. I think if you were to do a straw poll, there would be broad agreement it's not the best designed stuff. But you were having this conversation with me the other day, so I did. I found that there is somebody in the Figma community who's made an Electron desktop wrapper for Figma for Linux. So I have installed that, and I have had a little practice. So I'm gonna challenge myself this year to actually design something in Figma. That I've got a couple of random projects that I want to work on for personal interest, and I'm gonna have a go and see if I can't turn out a half decent UI as a result.
I'm glad. That's exactly what I want, like everyone on the team to start doing. And another tool I would recommend that everyone has probably heard of or used is Webflow. On Webflow.com, I would almost rather create. And Webflow actually creates like living websites and even like no-code web application solutions. And you can go in there and create a design system really easily, just as you can in Figma, and it can be a live site. So there's a lot of tools out there, like no-code tools out there that help you create some really beautiful designs.
Yeah. So this has sparked some conversation with Big Pod has said, hang on, let me see. So Big Pod says, the problem he has is getting from what's on the screen in Figma or something similar to the actual application.
Yeah. I think like the way that we solve that is by using component-based design system principles. And so that's what I work for with like we have the Noir design system. That's what I call it because I want things to have silly names, but and have things to be fancy. But the idea of like having a design system based on Vuetify and all the components that Vuetify uses, I think is the way to get from the design to the development and having very little, discrepancy between the two. And so when I design things like our cards, for example, these are the cards that fill our UI. Mm-hmm. These should be the exact cards that we have in a design pattern library on Vuetify on the developer side. And there should be no, like, when I say like that Figma has this inspect feature where you can look at the CSS, eventually that shouldn't even matter, because when I design something, a developer, a PM, anyone can look at this and be like, oh no, we already have that component in the design pattern library. Like we don't have to like do any custom CSS. We can just reuse that component. However, that is a very long process, and it's a never-ending process.
Mm.
But someday we'll get there, Big Pod.
Very good. So, you've done the initial iterations. We've got. I don't think we've unlocked all of the features yet, and we'll talk about like the evolution of the functionality in a couple of days. But in terms of where we are now, what next? What are your sort of what's on your sort of roadmap of where you want to take future iterations of the design?
Yeah, I think, and I spoke to it earlier about, taking the sort of the boring parts seriously, like how do we get someone signed up for Slim, and have the tokens and stuff like that. Another thing that's similar to that is things like connectors. So we have connectors in our Slim developer platform where you can connect all sorts of private registries or public registries, but like anything from like Docker Hub to ECR to GCR. How do we take that experience and add it into the Docker desktop extension, and do it seamlessly? Because there will be moments where the user has to jump from the Docker desktop extension to the Slim developer platform and back to the Docker desktop extension. That's kind of as a challenge, as a designer to like work within two different experiences simultaneously. And so we're gonna be launching a lot of this stuff, this week with DockerCon going on. But I think that they're not. The feedback that we get from users will dictate where we go next, because we're going to have to revise these and make them even more seamless.
Right. Understood. So there's been a little bit of conversation. I'm just going to reiterate something that I've put in the chat. Esme is already a winner of the new batch of Kodi stickers that Grace designed and we had made. We're going to be handing those out at upcoming in-person events. But if you join our Discord, links above my head or in the chat, we're doing a giveaway and there's still 5 spots. So if you jump in there and tell us which of the Kodi stickers you want, I understand from my colleague Gillian, you've got like a day or so to get yourself in position to get some of our new mascot Kodi stickers. And they're not stickies yet, but we do have, as a result of May the 4th last week, we have a few Star Wars Kodi emotes as well in the chat, which I'm a big fan of. So with all that has happened so far, it was sort of a compressed window of activity over 6 weeks, and there were some compromises that had to be made. What would you do differently if you were doing this again, maybe without the time pressures?
Yeah, without the time pressure, I would do it how we kind of traditionally do it in design is we allow research and user interviews to dictate how we design things. One of the great benefits of working at Slim is we have a bunch of engineers that work for Slim, and so I can get some sort of user interview, user research quickly by asking, my fellow coworkers, the engineers that work on this stuff, and they actually use the product themselves. I'm like, well, how would you do it this way? However, there is some limitation to that because they're so close to the product themselves that they can't get like a really perfectly unbiased answer. And so if I were to do it over again, it's like, yeah, I would spend a lot of time and probably a lot of money and resources getting as many user interviews as possible with devs that are actually using the Docker desktop experience. But the great thing again about iterating on design is we're going to have a bunch of that feedback in the next like month or two, and so we'll be able to get to where I want to be just maybe like a month later than I would have done it.
Fantastic. So I think what you're doing there is you're penciling yourself in to come back for another stream in a month or however long it takes to show us like where we were on this stream to where we've got to, and sort of some of the decisions and maybe the feedback that guided some of the changes we see in future iterations. I think that would certainly be interesting. And Esme says here, this has been really insightful to hear how design is done in practice. So I'm glad you found this useful, Esme. And if there's anyone else out there who's sort of encouraged by this, then I'll put links to the Figma. What did you label it? The Docker Desktop UI kit. I will put links to that in our Discord after this stream is concluded. It's already been pasted in the chat. I'll put it in again now in case anybody missed it earlier. Here we go. And if you've got any questions about any of this, then Sam is in Discord. If you've got questions about design or feedback about the extension itself or the Slim.AI, website and product, Sam is responsible for all this stuff. Just let us know. I think I've captured everybody's questions. Is there anything else you wanted to touch on, Sam?
I will say one thing. I know I said everyone can be a designer, but we are actually hiring for another designer at Slim.AI. So if you or anybody wants to be, wants to design some awesome experiences for a very technical product, check out our listings on LinkedIn or on Slim.AI.
Okay, I will find those links. I'll paste those in our Discord after. In fact, I'll probably paste those in our Discord tomorrow now because it's quite late here. And I'm not sure I have those links, but I'll put them in our Discord and anyone can circulate those. And I will also be hiring. I am hiring. It's just we're a bit busy with DockerCon this week and they're mega busy with KubeCon next week. So I have a position that's coming up for a DevRel position at Slim.AI. So also get followed for our LinkedIn profile, which again you'll find at the website above my head. So when that gets posted, if you or anyone might be interested in that, you can get in touch. And if you've got any questions about openings at Slim.AI, just ask in the Discord channel. We had a couple of graduates recently, posting in there saying that they were interested in working with us, and that sort of started that conversation with them. And of course, we've been referring to Big Pod here, who's in the chat with us, in the Twitch chat with us today. And Big Pod started out as a community contributor and has been working here with us for about 6 or 7 months now, I think. Right, well, thank you very much, Sam, for that. Thank you for also explaining we've got a design position coming up for recruitment. I think we will put a bow on this. So thank you everyone for coming. If you're not in our Discord, do get joined because tomorrow we have a community exclusive live Q&A happening in our Discord, and we'll have Sam and members of the design team and members of the engineering team to do a live Q&A about anything Slim.AI, but in particular, the Docker Desktop extension. So if you want to learn a little bit more about what we do and how we do it and where we're headed, then join our Discord. You'll find the event schedule in the Discord, and you can join us tomorrow for a chat. And like I said, tomorrow it's DockerCon, so we've got a schedule of Evan's going to be speaking at DockerCon tomorrow. So's John, our CEO, going to be speaking at DockerCon. Kelsey Hightower, who's one of our advisors, has got a fireside chat with Scott, the Docker CEO, and Brett Fisher, who's one of the Slim community members and high profile Docker captain. He's got a talk coming up at DockerCon tomorrow as well, and we're going to be featuring that. So if you're not joined up, join, and if you're not registered for DockerCon, you still can, and it's free to sign up and participate. Right, okay, well, thank you, Sam, that was excellent. I shall be picking your brains about Figma in the coming weeks, I'm sure.
Looking forward to it. Thanks, Martin.
Right, thank you everybody. We'll see you tomorrow, if not sooner. Bye bye for now.